Sweden, in many countries in Europe and United States and so on, in this public health area. Diabetes? You said diabetes? Yeah, that's small. Stroke, small. In Sweden, more than half of children and teenagers up to the age of 14 are affected by this. And I'm talking about asthma, allergies. I find children that had hay fever or anything like that. They were very uncommon. And now in Sweden and in many other countries, it's more than half of the children. And if you look on the whole population in Sweden, it's a little bit more than a third. That is what? Is that good or not? Do you find that to be good?
It hurts a child.
Asthma and allergy, is that so very bad?
It is.
It is? But it's good at the same time, because this is now the largest profit-making machine in the pharmaceutical industry. So in countries like Sweden, we get enormous revenues because of this. But of course, it's a catastrophe. From a public health point of view, it has just gone out of proportions for a long time ago. And therefore, again, if I was responsible for the public health, I would say, hey, scientists in Australia already in 1997, 1999 could show that the key cell for asthma, allergy and oversensitivities doesn't like to be irradiated by microwaves or mobile phones, decked indoor telephones, Wi-Fi and likewise. Should we really do that then? For us, this was extremely interesting because the Australian studies were done at the end of the 1990s, but already in the mid-1980s, we had looked on skin biopsies from people with a functional impairment electrohypersensitivity. And we could show, which you see here on skin biopsies, and to the left you have a microscopic image from normal healthy volunteers. Each white spot is a mast cell that has been shown with this particular technique. To the right, you have corresponding skin biopsies from people with electrohypersensitivity, and you don't need to be scientists to realize that the latter group has a dramatic increase in number, size, and an alteration in placement within the dermis of the skin. And it's very interesting because this particular finding could actually explain all of the symptoms that a person with electrohypersensitivity reports. And just dependent on mast cells and just one single molecular type, namely histamine, you can explain the whole of it. And this is a dramatic other elderly pathologists told me that the image you see here is the classical image of a classical radiation damage from, for instance, uranium, radium, plutonium, from X-ray, or from strong ultraviolet light. This is a classical image of a radiation damage. And people with electrohypersensitivity, they report that they don't like computer screens, light ray tubes, they don't like wireless telecommunication systems and so forth. And maybe they react as the traditional yellow canary bird in the coal mine. They tell us that something is wrong in our environment. And so this is a very important finding, of course. And I sense what you think. If I back the image, to the left you have normal healthy volunteers, to the right electrohypersensitivity, dramatic increase in that. But what about the first group? If we take normal healthy medical and dental students and place them in front of household television sets and ordinary home computers, will that affect the mast cells in the skin? And we did such a provocation study, and if you look on panel C and D, that's from the same healthy volunteer, and to the left is before they're exposed, and to the right after 2 hours. You see an increase in number of mast cells. And the interesting thing was that these students did not report any sensations whatsoever, apart from some said it was pretty boring to sit with their back skin towards computers and household television sets. But they didn't feel anything. But the cells, they reacted as if they had been close to uranium, radium, or to plutonium, or to X-rays, or whatever, but they hadn't. They were just sitting in front of your very nice television sets and your very nice home computers. And still they got this reaction. And I could expand a lot of this because this yielded a lot of very odd things. And you can just summarize that society was not ready to know this at that time. But after 6 years, an American journal, the Journal of Cutaneous Pathology, published this study, and the pictures are from it. I have a colleague in Japan who is a very interesting scientist, or rather I would say a physician who has become a scientist, and he has looked on allergic skin responses, and he could show that exposure of such allergic skin wheel responses to microwave radiation from mobile phones will enhance these responses, and also in association with the release of blood-borne markers for allergic reactions. So you see, we are sort of tying in on the whole issue. More and more pieces of this gigantic jigsaw puzzles are being produced. And when I saw this specific publication, I immediately wrote to Hajime Kimata in Kyoto and said, please drop everything you have by hand, go to the nearest airport, come to the Karolinska Institute, because this is so important, we just have to have you here. And he responded in a very polite Japanese way that unfortunately he was unable because he had to tend to his patients and his boss didn't allow him to leave Japan, and so on, so on, so on. And that was very good. We didn't